Delilah stood across the conference table, reading from a crisp HR document like it was a grocery list. "Effective immediately," she said, voice steady but cold. "You are relieved of all operational duties at Pierce & Co. A transitional exit package will be processed through legal." I blinked. The words hung in the air. Incomprehensible, surreal. This was my sister, my own blood, firing me less than 24 hours after being named CEO of our family business. "Is this a joke?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Delilah didn't answer. She slid the document toward me and turned to the next person in the room, Elise Tran. Elise had been with the company longer than either of us. She practically raised me in the halls of this office when Dad was too busy to make school pickups. Now she looked like a stranger, stoic, resigned. Delilah handed her a second envelope. "You're offering her early retirement?" I said, stunned. "Why? She's the backbone of—" "She's part of an outdated structure," Delilah cut in, her words practiced. "This is about evolution, not emotion." Elise didn't argue. She simply signed. The silence that followed was heavier than any boardroom tension I'd ever felt. Delilah adjusted her blazer, gathered the papers, and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. I turned to Elise, still numb. "Are you okay?" She hesitated. Then she handed me a folded sticky note before picking up her bag. "Read it later," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "They made me choose Holland." I stood alone in the room for what felt like years. Finally, I opened the note. Her handwriting was rushed but unmistakable. "If you're not here, it's not Pierce & Co. anymore." And just like that, I realized I wasn't just being pushed out of a job. I was being erased from a legacy we both helped build. And I hadn't even seen it coming. It didn't start with the firing. The truth is, I'd been disappearing from this family long before Delilah signed my name off a contract. After Dad's stroke. I dropped everything. I was 24 and halfway through my MBA when the call came. Delilah sent a bouquet. I moved back home, stepped into Dad's schedule without being asked, and never left for 17 years. I was the one in the office before sunrise, and still there when the night crew clocked out. While Delilah built a name for herself on the West Coast, brand architect, media strategist, whatever that meant, I rebuilt the foundation of Pierce & Co. with my own bare hands. When the financial crash hit in 2008, our logistics firm was days away from collapsing. Clients pulled out. Suppliers froze credit. I worked 70-hour weeks, renegotiating every contract, meeting with banks, and quietly selling our fleet to stay afloat. I didn't ask for credit. I just didn't want the company Grandpa built to die on my watch. At Christmas, Delilah flew in wearing a new Burberry coat and told me I looked tired. What I didn't say then, what I never said, was that I hadn't slept through the night in 3 years. That I'd cashed out my own IRA to make payroll once. That I missed our father's birthday because I was on the tarmac with an emergency shipment trying to save our biggest client relationship. She smiled for holiday photos. I signed a loan extension in the parking lot. We were never the same after that. I kept telling myself we were just wired differently. Delilah was the charm, I was the grit. She knew how to work a room, I knew how to work the numbers. It didn't mean she didn't care. It just meant we loved the company in different ways. Or so I believed. 2 nights after she fired me, I opened my email to sort through old documents before closing my company accounts. That's when I saw the folder, Succession Strategy, Delilah, hidden in the archived legal shared drive. I opened it. Meeting transcripts, strategy drafts, memos with board members dated months before our father died. All written in clean, corporate language. But their message was unmistakable. Delilah had been laying the groundwork for the CEO position while our father was still fighting for his life. I stared at the screen. bile rising in my throat. She hadn't just stepped into an open seat. She'd pushed for it, carefully, discreetly, before the dust had even settled on Dad's final diagnosis. So no, the betrayal didn't start in that boardroom on Monday morning. It started the day she decided to take what I built, while pretending she hadn't even noticed. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, 2 summers ago, at Grandpa's lake house. The kind of day that felt too quiet to be important. Sunlight flickering through pine trees. The smell of gasoline from his old fishing boat drifting across the deck. He called me out to the porch with 2 cups of coffee and a rusted metal box in his lap. "You still drink it black?" he asked, already knowing the answer. I nodded, settling into the chair beside him. His joints cracked as he shifted, and I noticed how much thinner his frame looked in that faded flannel. He was aging faster than any of us wanted to admit. "I've been meaning to give you something," he said, resting the box on the table between us. "But I needed to be sure." "Sure of what?" "That you'd stay steady when the house caught fire." He reached inside and pulled out a simple leather folder and a black pen. Sleek. Heavy. Engraved with his initials. I remembered it from childhood. He only used it for major contracts, the kind that changed careers. He placed both in my hands. "That pen's been with me since the first freight deal I ever signed. Don't lose it." I smiled. Confused. "What's all this, Grandpa?" He nodded at the folder. "For when the world doubts you." Inside were the legal documents. A 28% share in Pierce & Co., all held in a private trust under my name. And a clause, handwritten at the bottom and signed by both him and his attorney, stating that if I were ever terminated without documented cause, full voting rights and veto power would be transferred to me instantly. No board vote required. No negotiation. My throat tightened. "You really think it could come to this?" "I think people change when power's on the table," he said quietly. "And I think your sister loves the idea of legacy more than the weight of earning it." I looked out at the lake, still and golden under the late-day sun. My hands gripped the pen tighter. I didn't want to believe him. I didn't want to imagine Delilah turning on me, or the company turning on itself. But Grandpa never said anything without reason. "Promise me you won't use it unless you have to," he added. "But if that day comes, you use it without hesitation." Saint. That memory returned like a whisper when I stood outside the boardroom 2 days after Delilah fired me, folder in one hand, pen in the other. I had kept them locked away, hoping I'd never need them. But now, the only thing more dangerous than using them was not. I didn't take the elevator. That morning, after Delilah's final words as CEO, I packed what little I kept in my office. 2 framed photos, 1 fountain pen, 1 plant I'd nursed through 8 fiscal years. I slid it all into a single cardboard box, the kind interns used when we let people go. I chose the side stairs instead. I couldn't bear the thought of standing in that glass elevator while everyone on each floor watched me descend, literally and metaphorically. As I passed through the hallway, no one met my eyes. People I'd hired, mentored, fought to protect during layoffs. They all kept their heads down, pretending to be focused on keyboards or fake phone calls. I wasn't surprised. Delilah was CEO now. To acknowledge me was to risk association, and in a company like ours. Loyalty was only as deep as the last quarterly report, but Elise stood near the back entrance, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't say a word, just handed me a yellow sticky note folded in half. Then she nodded once, like she knew what I'd done for this place, and walked away without looking back. I waited until I was in the parking garage to open it. "They're not worth your silence." No sign-off, no name, just the truth, written in her neat, familiar handwriting. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the building I had helped save more times than anyone in it would admit. I remembered dragging a sleeping bag into my office during the 2009 crash. I remembered walking my father through his retirement plan after his stroke. I remembered seeing Delilah's face on the company's rebrand banners, the next chapter of Pierce & Co., as if I'd never existed. That was the worst part, not the firing. Not even the betrayal. It was being erased. Like all those years were just background noise in someone else's spotlight. When I got home, I powered up my laptop to cancel my work accounts, trying to stay practical. That's when I saw the notification, an internal HR memo forwarded to my inbox by mistake. Subject line: Confidential, Succession Strategy, Holland Phase Out. Dated 6 months ago. My name was in bullet points. Targeted transition from ops. Minimize influence with board. Position Delilah as strategic evolution. No public exit messaging. Keep low visibility. My stomach turned cold. This hadn't been an impulsive decision. It was a strategy, an execution plan, and I was the target. They didn't just fire me. They had planned to erase me, piece by quiet piece. By the time I pulled into Martin Faulkner's office, the heartbreak had crystallized into something sharper. I wasn't here as a daughter, or a sister, or even a former executive. I was here as the legal majority shareholder of Pierce & Co., and the only person left willing to protect it. Martin greeted me with the kind of quiet sadness that only someone who'd served 3 generations of a family business could wear. His office still smelled faintly of wood polish and loyalty. He gestured for me to sit. "I heard what Delilah did," he said gently. "Your grandfather would have expected this moment." I pulled the trust documents from my bag, the same ones Grandpa handed me 2 summers ago on that porch overlooking the lake, and slid them across his desk, along with the engraved pen. Martin read them without rushing, nodding at the familiar ink, his finger pausing on the clause that changed everything. "Termination without cause," he murmured, eyes scanning the language. "Triggers full activation of voting rights, including corporate veto power, effective immediately." My voice was steady now. "She didn't give me a reason. Martin, no documentation, no performance reviews, nothing." "Then she gave you everything you need," he replied. "We'll file with the board before their quarterly session. Once submitted, your authority becomes legal, uncontested." I felt the slow surge of purpose rise in my chest. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was traction, a way forward. Then Martin paused, almost reluctantly, and opened another file. "I need you to see something else," he said, sliding a stack of state business filings toward me. My eyes narrowed as I scanned them: corporate entity documents, shell accounts, and quiet asset transfers. And one name buried in the paperwork caught me like a punch to the ribs: Trevor Holt, Delilah's ex-boyfriend. "You're kidding me," I whispered. "She's transferring assets? Freight routes, vendor contracts, even the trademark on the Pierce & Co. sustainability program. All rerouted through a Delaware LLC. Trevor is listed as the acting partner." "That's illegal," I said, breath catching. "Or at the very least, fraudulent misrepresentation." Martin nodded. "But unless someone challenges it, it just becomes business." I stared at the documents, my fingers curled tight around Grandpa's pen. Delilah hadn't just betrayed me. She was hollowing out the company and planting her name on a legacy that didn't belong to her. "I want every document prepared," I said, "and I want the board to see all of this, before she knows I'm coming." Martin leaned back, expression sharpening. "You're not just fighting for your place anymore. Holland." "No," I said, standing. "I'm fighting for the truth." And now I wasn't just reacting. I was coming for her, on paper, with law, and with the one thing she underestimated: me. Delilah didn't flinch when I walked into the boardroom, but the way her fingers froze mid-slide across her presentation remote said enough. The others looked up slowly, puzzled at first, then cautious. I wasn't supposed to be there, according to the memo circulated just that morning. I no longer had operational relevance, but I had something far more permanent now: voting authority and truth. "Good morning," I said, placing the folder gently on the table in front of me. "I won't take much of your time." Delilah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Holland, this isn't—" "I have documents," I interrupted, calmly, proving that my recent termination was conducted without cause, in violation of the trust agreement signed by our grandfather. As of that termination, I hold 28% controlling shares and veto rights per the original incorporation terms. Martin Faulkner, seated near the end of the table, gave a subtle nod of confirmation. His presence alone made it clear. This was legitimate. Delilah recovered quickly. "Let's not make this personal. It's already personal," I said, my voice steady. "Because what you did wasn't just remove me, it was calculated." I handed copies of the trust to each board member, watching them read. Some leaned forward, others sat back, stunned. "And I wish that was all," I continued, sliding my phone onto the table. "But it's not." I tapped the screen. Delilah's voice, clear and confident, filled the room. "If Holt's firm covers the rebrand and the West Yard development, I'll authorize the asset transfer, quietly, no board vote. I'll frame it as sustainability restructuring." Silence. The words hovered, poisonous and undeniable. I didn't look at Delilah. I didn't need to. I could feel the heat pouring off her as the implications landed, hard and fast. "You've been selling our core contracts to a rival firm in exchange for private capital support," I said evenly. "Trevor Holt's name is all over the filings." She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. One of the board members cleared his throat. "Where did this recording come from?" I paused. "It was sent to me anonymously," I said, "but I recognized the voice instantly." Only later, in the elevator with Martin, did I glance again at the email metadata. The sender used a masked account, but the file name was labeled etfinalaudio.mp3. E.T. Elise Tran. She hadn't just left with Grace. She left me a weapon. And Delilah never saw it coming. The silence after the recording ended wasn't empty. It was charged, like the seconds before a thunderclap. Delilah's jaw was clenched, her posture stiff, but the mask was cracking. I saw it in the way she blinked too quickly, how her knuckles whitened around the edge of the podium. Chairman Leeds was the first to speak. "Miss Pierce, is this true?" She didn't deny it. "Not exactly." "That conversation was taken out of context," she said, forcing calm. "I was exploring strategic partnerships. Nothing was finalized." Martin Faulkner cleared his throat gently. "The trust agreement doesn't require intent. Delilah, it requires breach, and this qualifies." A beat passed, then another. And then, Paul Harwood, our largest outside investor, and someone who'd once championed Delilah's appointment, leaned forward, lacing his fingers. "I've reviewed the numbers over the last decade," he said quietly. "Delilah, you've been here for less than a year. Holland rebuilt this company after the 2008 crash. She negotiated every major client retention contract. She digitized operations. She's the reason we're profitable." He turned toward me, eyes direct. "She built this. We follow her." The shift was immediate. Other board members nodded. A motion was suggested to reinstate Holland as interim CEO and suspend Delilah pending internal audit. I said nothing, just kept my expression neutral while heat rushed under my skin. My fingers curled around the pen my grandfather gave me, the one I hadn't used since the last contract he ever signed. Delilah's voice cut through the murmurs, sharp, unstable. "You planned this," she snapped, eyes locked on me. "This entire setup, the firing, the silence, the timing, it was all an act, a trap." I held her gaze. "No, it was a response. You've always wanted to prove you were smarter," she spat, stepping forward, voice rising. You've been playing martyr for years, waiting to pounce. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her words did the damage. Right there, in front of the board. Delilah revealed what I had always known, but never spoken aloud. That she didn't have the temperament, the strategy, or the restraint to lead. Chairman Leeds raised a hand. That's enough. This isn't a courtroom, it's a boardroom. But the verdict had already been delivered. The vote passed. 7 in favor, 2 abstaining, none in her defense. Delilah stood motionless for a beat, then turned, heels echoing sharply as she left the room. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed. Slowly. Fully. Not because it was over, but because I was finally where I'd earned the right to be. The vote had been cast. The signatures were inked. And just like that, Delilah Pierce was no longer CEO. No applause followed. No raised voices. Just a stillness, the kind that follows the collapse of something built on illusion. She left the boardroom without looking back, shoulders stiff, silence trailing behind her like smoke. I didn't chase her. I didn't gloat. I just stayed seated, letting the room breathe without her in it. An hour later, I stood before the executive team. Some looked relieved, others looked rattled. All waited to see if I would come in swinging. I didn't. There won't be any revenge firings, I said, voice even. No grand speeches, no backroom deals, just one immediate action. Every financial transfer made in the past 6 months will be reviewed and publicly documented to the board and external auditors. Someone exhaled. Someone else nodded. That includes any shadow LLCs, shell corporations, or internal promotions authorized without board consent, I added. We're not here to burn things down. We're here to repair the cracks before they become fractures. I didn't need to punish Delilah. The truth was doing that for me. Later that night, alone in the quiet of my office, I powered on the company's restricted internal portal, a tool I hadn't accessed since my termination. Martin had requested full administrative clearance be restored to me within 24 hours. It was. I opened Delilah's executive correspondence folder. There, buried among polished pitch decks and glossy rebranding drafts, was something that stopped me cold. Personnel Realignment Proposal, Phase 2. The file detailed plans for a sweeping dismissal of employees associated with legacy operations, most of them longtime staff who had worked under our father. Names like Elise, Patrick from Fleet, Angela from Distribution. People who had built the heart of the company long before Delilah had even set foot in the building. She hadn't just fired me. She was preparing to erase everything tied to him, to us. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text. From an unknown number. Elise. You were never the shadow. You were the sun. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I saved it. Not to remember the pain, but to remember the clarity. I didn't reclaim this company to prove I was right. I reclaimed it to protect the people and principles that had been left behind. And I would lead with one thing my sister never understood. Discipline without vengeance. There was no time for celebration. The morning after Delilah's exit, I arrived at the office at 6:15 a.m. Just like I used to, no cameras, no speeches, just a quiet walk through the lobby I hadn't entered freely in weeks. The walls still held her marketing slogans. A new era, a bold vision. But now, it would be mine to redefine. I gathered the department heads in the main conference room by 7 o'clock. Most of them looked exhausted, some still unsure. But they showed up. That meant something. We're not chasing flash anymore, I said, standing at the head of the table. No slides, no theatrics. We're going back to fundamentals, integrity, reliability, and accountability. There were no claps, but there were nods. And that was enough. Within days, I'd dissolved the shadow task forces Delilah had built. I reinstated key mid-level managers who had been quietly sidelined. I brought Elise back, this time as senior advisor of legacy operations. She cried when I offered. then accepted with a handshake as firm as I remembered. Our first major win came the following week when Everline Logistics, a partner we nearly lost, requested a renegotiation. They'd been ready to pull out under Delilah's leadership. Now they wanted a 10-year commitment. "We trust you, Holland," their CEO said. "You're the reason we signed with Pierce in the first place," when the contract arrived. I sat alone in my office with the lights low and the blinds drawn. I reached into the top drawer and pulled out the pen Grandpa had given me 2 summers ago. Heavy. Brass. Initials still etched in its side. "For when the world doubts you." I clicked it once, then signed. The rebuild had begun, but not everyone had moved on. Later that afternoon, I found a knock on my door. Quiet. Hesitant. It was Jamie, one of the youngest analysts from business intelligence. He couldn't have been more than 26. "Can I talk to you? Off the record?" he asked, shifting nervously. I closed my laptop and nodded. "Of course." Jamie sat down and looked at the floor before speaking. "About a month ago, Delilah offered me a promotion. Director level, double my salary." I stayed still. She said all I had to do was feed her updates on what certain departments were doing, especially the old guard teams from your era. She wanted me to report on who was loyal to the past. I raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" He shook his head quickly. "No, but I recorded our conversations, just in case." He pulled out a USB drive and set it on the desk. "You should have this. I don't want anything in return. I want to work for someone who doesn't treat loyalty like a threat." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something familiar. Not fear, conviction. "Jamie," I said quietly, "you're exactly the kind of leader we'll need to build the next decade." His shoulders dropped with relief. "Thank you." After he left, I held the drive in one hand and Grandpa's pen in the other. The past had tried to bury me, but the future? It was mine to write, one signature, one loyal voice at a time. The strange part wasn't the silence. It was how comfortable I had become with it. A week had passed since the board vote, since Delilah's abrupt exit, since the last round of whispered apologies from those who had looked the other way. The building was calmer now, steadier, but something inside me still felt unfinished. That morning, I arrived earlier than usual, 5:45 a.m., just before sunrise. The office tower stood in a soft blue-gray hush, empty halls echoing with the quiet hum of lights powering on. On the corner desk of what was now officially my office, someone had left a sealed envelope with my name on it. No return address. The handwriting stopped me. I knew it immediately. Grandpa's. My fingers trembled as I broke the wax seal. Inside was a single page, aged slightly at the corners, written in his signature black ink. "Holland. Clarity comes after betrayal. But once you see clearly, don't ever look away. Your sister isn't your enemy. Confusion is. In this life, people will disappoint you. Systems will try to erase you. But if you still hold your name, your purpose, and your pen, you haven't lost. Now take your place, and don't flinch." Grandpa, I read it twice. Then again. The weight in my chest didn't lift. Exactly. But it settled. Like something that finally made sense. No more fighting. No more needing to be proven right. Just the quiet truth that I had done what needed to be done, and that doing the right thing doesn't always come with applause. I walked slowly into the CEO's office, the same one my father had once ruled from, the one Delilah had redesigned, and the one I now reclaimed without anger, without ego, just clarity. On the desk sat my grandfather's pen. I clicked it once, then looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows. That's when Martin called. "Have you seen the latest email?" "No," I said, pulling it up. Subject, merger interest, RE. Strategic future from Victor Lang. CEO, Apex Logistics Group. They were the same firm that Delilah once tried to sell us out to. But this message was different. We're impressed with how you've stabilized the company. If you're open to a merger, we'd like to meet under your terms. I smiled, not because they wanted us, but because they now knew the terms had changed. I replied with one line, "Happy to talk, but this time, we don't bend." Then I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the silence settle around me, not as loneliness, but as proof I'd made it, not because I won, but because I stayed. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed by someone you trusted, or forced to prove your worth when you shouldn't have had to, this story was for you. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to rebuild something that was taken from you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories of power, family, and quiet revenge. Because sometimes, the best victories are the ones that no one sees coming.